Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And the most important updates are coming from Feodosia, where the Ukrainians, as a result of Storm Shadow or Scalp missile strike, managed to destroy Russian big marine ship by the name of Novocherkassk. We have lots of videos of explosions on this, since we can see the exact moment of when the missile got the target. Very powerful explosion, and the sources are saying that that ship was fully loaded with ammo and with rockets, with explosive. Furthermore, some sources are saying that that ship was fully loaded with Gerань drones that the Russians just got from Iran or maybe from some factories on the mainland, and they were trying to move them as close as possible to Crimea for further attacks, let's say, in Odessa area. The Russians are saying, for example, this is the picture of the fire on board. The Russians are saying that those attacks that was made by two Ukrainian Su-24, and the Russians are saying that when those aircraft Su-24 was returning back home, the Russians managed to shut down them with air defense forces. So if we zoom out, the situation took place something like this. The Ukrainians started their movements somewhere on the line between Starokonstantinov and Khmelnytsky. There are two airfields, and this is the main base of Ukrainian Su-24 that can carry Storm Shadow or Scalp missiles. The Ukrainians bypassed, as you can see, a significant territory of Ukraine. Most of this time they were invisible, probably for the Russian air defense, or the Russians didn't have enough of time to counterattack them or something like this. Somewhere in the vicinity of Snegirivka in Kherson area, according to the Russian military expert Rybar, the Ukrainians launched their missiles. As you can see, the Ukrainian missiles bypassed significant distance before they got Feodosiivka, and if we calculate the distance to the port, the Ukrainian missiles managed to bypass more than around 300 kilometers or around 200 miles. And after those strikes, the Ukrainians turned their machines back and start moving back in direction of Starokonstantinov, but somewhere to the 125 kilometers northwest from Nikolaev, the Russians managed to shut them down. So this is the story, like a short version of the story, but the longer version is much difficult and complicated. And the story of that attack against Russian ship in Feodosia began not this morning, this night. The story began when the Ukrainians started reporting that during the previous 6 days they managed to shut down up to 5 Russian aircrafts, like 4 Su-24 and 1 Su-30. We still haven't received any geolocated confirmation of that, but that was the first steps. After that, if you remember, we discussed that the Russians stopped using FAB 500 and any type of FAB in this area, which confirms that the Russians took a decision to reduce the number of flights in this area because this area was not secured. And now we understand that the main purpose of the Ukrainian air defense system in this area that worked during the previous days was not to shut down the Russian Su-30 and Su-34 that were bombing the Ukrainian bank of the river. The most important objective of that situation was to stop to force the Russians to stop using destroyers, the ships, the aircrafts that can shut down the Ukrainian aircrafts. So the Ukrainians just wanted to be secured, because sometimes the ground air defense is not effective type of weapon against the Ukrainian Su-24. The best solution in some cases to use, let's say, a Russian MiG, for example, or other type of Su, like Su-35, to shut down the Ukrainian Su-24, because they can use much more longer range missiles. And basically the Ukrainians, if they haven't managed to secure this area from air defense, the Ukrainians aircrafts could be destroyed or shut down somewhere in the central part of Ukraine with new Russian type of weapon. So anything might happen, but we have what we have. So this is the situation. And another conclusions that I can make is that probably the attack against Feodosia is not the last let's say story, not the final story in these big lines of different actions. I think that the main purpose for the Ukrainians, of course, is to destroy or target once again Crimean bridge. So it's very likely that Feodosia was just a test target when the Ukrainians tried to test everything and to find out and to understand what is going on. So I believe that before the new year comes, the Ukrainians will make another attempt to attack Crimean bridge using the same tactics. Now we are moving to the situation on the ground, and we have lots of very interesting details and updates, and probably the most important ones are coming from Zaporozhye area, from the area of Robotyne. Today we got geolocated video from the Ukrainian sources. On this video we can see how the Russian personnel carrier was moving along the fields. He was crossing the fields from Russian side in direction of Robotyne itself, and the road T-04008, and the Ukrainians they followed that armored vehicle. It's very difficult to see because the quality is not so good, but for example on this moment we see the FPV drone strike against the Russian armored vehicle, and as you can see on the Russian armored vehicle there is a smoke, which means that engine worked. So it's like not something that was abandoned by the Russians a long time ago. Furthermore, other sources are saying that the Russians managed to improve their positions in this area and to capture more territories and to get closer to Robotyne, to the northern part of Robotyne. So if we summarize everything and if we add some polygons, we have like 100% confirmation, we can be 100% sure that as a result of Russian offensive operation or Russian like active defense operations that took place during the previous days in this area, the Russians managed to capture these fields. So on the video of Ukraine FPV drone strike, the Russian armored vehicle personnel carrier was moving something like this, and he was shot down almost on the northern edge of the village. So once again, according to this geolocation, we will of course correct the map, and everything tell us that the Russians basically have established complete fire control over the main road T-0408 that goes from Novodanilovka to Robotyne. So once again, the battle for Robotyne, the second battle for Robotyne, has already started, and there are very high chances that within the next even months, even less, the Russians will be able to return control over this village. Now we are moving further, and we're going to South Donetsk direction. Just few adjustments and corrections on the southern part. According to some mappers, the Russians managed to capture a few more tree lines or additional meters to the north in direction of Novomikhailivka, but without any confirmations of clashes inside of the village. So for now, just edge positions around without any entrance inside. When talking about Avdiivka area, we have just one interesting note from this territory. According to the Ukrainian sources, so there was like a Ukrainian channel who published information that before the new year there was like a rotation process, and like more than 100 soldiers got the right and possibility to be evacuated from Avdiivka to home for, let's say, new Christmas holidays. But during that rotation process, the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian convoy, and that convoy was destroyed as a result of missile strike, and more than 100 Ukrainian soldiers were killed during that attack. And this is very interesting information because if you remember, just a few days ago we were talking about something that on the 24th of December we got information that a significantly big convoy of trucks was concentrated in the vicinity of Orlovka, and the Russian sources managed like conclusion that those machines arrived to Avdiivka for evacuation. Now we understand, like 2 days after, on the 26th, that was not evacuation machines but just regular rotation machines, trucks that main purpose was to evacuate some number of Ukrainian forces from Avdiivka back home, let's say for Christmas holiday. But as you can see, that situation didn't happen because the Russians knew everything, and now I'm surprised how the Ukrainians managed to give this situation to happen. Now we're moving further to Bahmut Artyom's direction. We have no updates, just a regular military routine, clashes, continue offensive operation. Probably today we're going to receive more updates from this territory, and we got more updates and more interesting information from Tarskoye, Terny, from Lyman direction. According to lots of sources, for example, according to Syriac, the Russians managed to improve their positions further closer to Terny. So according to Syriac and many Russian sources, the current progress of the Russians in this area is something like this, and if we calculate the distance, for example, according to Syriac to Zherebets River or to Terny, the distance between the Russians and the Ukrainians is around 2.77 kilometers, but some Russian sources, other Russian sources very reliable, are saying that the distance between the Ukrainians and Russian edge positions is around 2 kilometers. So something like this. So while like during the previous night, maybe the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve and to get even closer and to establish control over something like this. So anyway, no matter, it's regarding these two different updates that are almost the same, almost the common, the Russians are heading, and currently, according to all these updates, the main purpose and the main target of the Russians is to get Terny, and basically this will allow the Russians to cut this area in two parts and then to handle with the southern one, with Yampolovka, Terny-Tarskoye, and with Novosadova, Nevskaya and Makeyevka separately. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.